Just what does it mean to come back here and be able to play or just as an opponent tonight?
Yeah, AZ was good to me, but I'm way happier where I'm at now. It was good to see people. It was fun to play in front of some fans. But for me, I'm way happier in Indiana.
At 8:14 in the first quarter, the Phoenix Mercury were already up 18-4, and that's when Indiana's night began to unravel. This wasn't just a blowout. It was a collision of storylines, old tensions, and truths that only surfaced after the final buzzer.
That had to have been one of, if not the most embarrassing loss of the season for the Indiana Fever so far. We lost to the Atlanta Dream earlier in the season, 77-58. We lost to the Valkyrie earlier in the season, 80-61. And tonight, against the Phoenix Mercury, we lose 95-60.
On paper, it's a 95-60 loss for the Fever, but if you watched closely, you saw more. Key injuries shaking the rotation, emotions running high between former teammates, and one player putting everything on the line long after the game was out of reach. Then came the post-game reveal, a podcast appearance that reframed an already emotional night.
Does this team practice? What I saw tonight looked like what I saw a month ago. Looked what I saw 3 weeks ago. Absolutely no offensive game plan. I thought this motion offense is when it's nobody's night in and night out. Everybody's allowed to have a night. If Kelsey Mitchell doesn't play well, it needs miraculous efforts from the rest of the team to pick this up. Sophie Cunningham played great tonight. Kelsey Mitchell had a bad game. Bad game. Where's everybody else?
By the end, you'll see why this wasn't just another loss. It was a test of loyalty, leadership, and identity for the Indiana Fever.
Steph, obviously, Sid had that injury and Ari left, I think, in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
What's the status of?
Well, it's Sid's left knee, Ari's right foot, and we'll get some more evaluation when we get home tomorrow and see where we are.
From the very first possessions, Indiana looked a half step slow. Passes floated just long enough for Phoenix defenders to pounce, and open looks clanged off the rim. Phoenix wasn't just playing faster, they were playing with precision.
Sophie Cunningham making her return to Phoenix, and it seems as if nobody on our team other than Sophie Cunningham felt any type of emotional connection to this game. Tawana Bonner just got done doing your team absolutely dirty. You guys escape with a victory when they come to Indiana, and you wipe your hands of it like it's all over and finished with. No, it goes both ways. You don't think we want to beat her on her home court? You don't think we want to get a W for Sophie Cunningham, making her return to the team that she spent her whole entire career with up until this point?
A quick steal turned into an easy layup, then another turnover into a transition three. In the first 5 minutes, Indiana had more turnovers than made baskets, and the Mercury smelled blood. Every miss fueled Phoenix's momentum, and by the end of the quarter, the Fever were staring at a double-digit hole. And just when it looked like things couldn't get worse, they did.
For sure. I mean, it sucks, right? You don't ever want to see anyone be injured on any team. I feel like there's been a lot of injuries this year in the W, harsh ones, I think. And, it's just another one. And Sid is still the heartbeat of our team. She's going to be okay. Our team's going to be okay. And again, it's just another hurdle that we're going to have to get over.
As if the early deficit wasn't enough, Indiana's depth took a hit in the worst way. A starting guard went down clutching her knee, the kind of moment that silences an arena.
It was, yeah, I don't know, emotions are kind of high. Honestly, it's just been a journey to get back to just being happy playing basketball again. I'm just, the joy, trying to find that. For a minute, basketball was kind of like off the radar for me a little bit. I didn't know if I loved it anymore. Like, I had a long conversation with Alyssa. So just to feel that again, feel that energy, feel this from that building was just amazing. And I feel like it was a game that I needed to, remind me, like, I love this.
Minutes later, another key backcourt player limped off, her grimace telling the whole story. With the rotation suddenly thin, the Fever had to shuffle lineups on the fly. Players were pushed into roles they hadn't prepared for, and Phoenix saw the opportunity to push harder. That's when the game's emotional temperature started to rise.
Did you see that when DB came back and played for us, that they got mad that our fan base was booing her?
I don't believe in booing former players unless they left on like some fuck you type shit.
For one Phoenix forward, a former Fever player, this game was more than just another night on the schedule. She came out aggressive, scoring confidently and celebrating each big moment with visible fire. But it wasn't just the buckets, it was the energy she brought against her old team.
This game meant just as much to Sophie Cunningham as it did to the Indiana Fever when Wnba made her return. The only difference is nobody on the Indiana Fever had Sophie Cunningham's back this time around. Sophie Cunningham was the only player trying hard, the only player giving effort, play in and play out, the only player getting into it with Alyssa Thomas, getting into it with Wnba, getting into it with Kalia Copper, while everybody else just mailed it in. This game was embarrassing, folks.
Every made shot came with a glance toward the Indiana bench. Every defensive stop carried extra weight. The fans felt it. The Fever players felt it. And what she said later would flip the post-game narrative entirely.
I like DB because like DB was one of my vets when I was in Phoenix, and then we gathered here into Indiana, and like it was kind of a surprise that she was signed to Indiana anyway, and so we'll take her in a heartbeat. Like she's a Hall of Famer, she's a hell of a basketball player, can score from anywhere on the court.
After the final buzzer, it wasn't the box score that people were talking about. It was something far more personal.
I doubt Wnba had any idea that how dirty she did her teammates on her way out of Indiana would ever come out to light. But Sophie Cunningham said, hold my beer. I got a podcast. I got this platform. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm not going to toe the company line. I'm not going to protect narratives. I'm not going to follow agendas. I'm going to tell you how it all went down. And Wnba disappeared like a ghost.
Sophie Cunningham, one of Indiana's standouts that night, shared her perspective on the matchup. Without anger or theatrics, she revealed a detail about that former teammate's departure that made fans see the night differently. Suddenly, the game's real story wasn't about points, it was about people. On her own platform, Sophie started with respect, calling her former teammate one of the league's most talented, a player who can score from anywhere. But then came the part that stuck. In Sophie's account, when that player left Indiana, there wasn't a direct goodbye to teammates. No message, no explanation, just gone. For outsiders, it might sound small, but for teammates who grind together for months, it's huge. That's Sophie's perspective, and hearing it out loud reframed the night entirely. It turned a stat line into a storyline that fans won't forget. That night, the spotlight seemed split in two. On one side, the Phoenix forward made noise with scoring and celebrations. On the other, Sophie played the long game, diving for loose balls, hitting tough shots, and never once letting the scoreboard dictate her effort. Her 18 points came in rhythm, built on team play, not just statement moments. Watching both performances side by side told its own story. Two versions of competitive fire, both valid, but driven by very different fuel. And that difference would keep echoing long after the lights went out. In one heated moment, Fever wing Lexi Hull found herself face-to-face with the Phoenix forward. Hull didn't back down. She matched the intensity, stared right back, and walked away without flinching. It might have been just a few seconds, but those seconds sent a message. This Fever team, even in a tough loss, refuses to be pushed around. That's the kind of identity-building moment that never shows up on a stat sheet, but sticks with a team for the rest of a season. And it wasn't the last sign that the Fever were ready to draw their own battle lines. Even on a night where the scoreboard was hard to look at, the Fever fans in attendance made their loyalty clear. They cheered for hustle plays, roared for defensive stops, and stayed locked in for players who kept fighting. It wasn't about the win, it was about who showed heart. In that way, the crowd chose their side and the message was unmistakable. Loyalty is built on connection, not just results. And the louder they got, the more it felt like this loss might actually build something lasting. Despite the injuries and the mounting deficit, Indiana stayed locked in as a unit. On the bench, players leaned in during timeouts, offering encouragement. On the court, the ones still standing gave every ounce of energy they had left. There were no signs of blame or frustration spilling over, only support. Nights like this can fracture a team, but this one seemed to pull the Fever closer together. And that unity was about to be tested in even bigger ways. For Phoenix, this was their night from start to finish. They executed, rebounded, and turned Indiana's mistakes into instant offense. The bench fed off every highlight. The fans loved every moment. It was the kind of game that builds momentum heading into the next matchup. And for their returning forward, it was a personal victory, one that meant more than just another tick in the win column. But even on Phoenix's best night, there was one detail they couldn't control: the story fans took home. Sophie's leadership wasn't about speeches or celebrations. It was in her consistency, diving for loose balls, sprinting back on defense, encouraging teammates. That kind of leadership doesn't fade when the score tilts the wrong way. It shows up exactly when it's needed most. And it's the kind of leadership the Fever may have to lean on again before this season is over. Post-game, the Fever didn't dwell on the loss or the personal history. They talked about sticking together, about supporting injured teammates, and about building through adversity. That's the kind of culture that survives a bad night and turns it into fuel for the next one. And if they can keep it intact, nights like this might be remembered less for the score and more for the foundation they built. Some defeats are just that, defeats. But others plant a seed for the future. With Caitlin Clark expected back soon, the Fever's ability to weather nights like this without fracturing could be the story that shapes their season. The test now is whether they can turn this frustration into fight, and the first answers to that test are coming sooner than anyone thinks. This game was a mirror. It reflected who thrived on personal redemption and who leaned into collective resilience. It revealed the players who stay locked in for their teammates no matter the score. And it reminded fans that loyalty is measured in more than just wins and losses. The scoreboard will fade, but the choices players made this game will follow them into every matchup from here on out. This could have been just another road loss that fades into the schedule. Instead, it became a snapshot of the Fever's true character, tested, exposed, and revealed in full view. Sophie Cunningham's honesty pulled back the curtain on a departure most fans only knew from the outside. Her effort on the floor showed what it means to fight for a team even when the scoreboard says there's no chance left. And the Fever's quiet unity, even in defeat, proved that their foundation is built on more than wins. With Caitlin Clark's return on the horizon, this night might be remembered not for the 35-point gap, but for planting the seeds of a stronger, hungrier team. And if this was just the prologue, the next chapter in this rivalry could change everything. If you stand with Sophie, drop Spicy Sophie in the comments, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next game in this story might be the one that tips the scales for good.